Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our Game of Thrones discussion podcast. We're going to do things a little bit differently this week. As being adults, time is a difficult thing as three people who work full-time jobs and live on different time schedules. Or not time schedules, what is it?
Time zones.
Time zones, that's the word I'm looking for. People who work on different time zones. It's hard to get them all together. So we're going to do it a little different. I'm going to meet up with Aaron. Aaron, say hi.
Hey, yeah, not everybody's go back in time like Bran or Hermione, so...
Yeah, unfortunately, we aren't time travelers. I am because I never sleep. But I'm going to do the second half of this with Jake right after this because he is not available for about another hour. But since time is of the essence... Aaron, what'd you think of this week's episode, which I think is entitled Night of the Seven Kingdoms?
I didn't hate it. I think I liked it a little better than last week, I think, just because I'm the type of person who's... Now I have Harry Potter on the brain. Whose favorite Harry Potter movie or book is The Half-Blood Prince. I like the calm before the storm feeling of it, and there are a lot of good just kind of tension-free moments, but I feel like they were earned, so it was kind of like it was just a nice change of pace than from what we're used to in Game of Thrones.
This is actually a quick fun fact about this week's episode too. I heard somewhere that this is one of 4 or 5 Game of Thrones episodes where nobody gets killed. There is no deaths, no blood, and it's one of only.
Definitely believe that.
Yeah, it's one of only 4 or 5. And yeah, I basically feel the same way about the episode. I kind of think of it more so in the terms of the TV show Lost, where a lot of people hated the ending of the show Lost. But for me, I really like the ending of Lost only because I really like the characters. And this episode in particular was more so a chance for people to say goodbye to a lot of the characters they love because a lot of them are about to die next episode. So in a lot of ways, plot-wise, this was basically just another filler episode in a way to kind of tie up loose ends with... Or finish a lot of storylines like Brienne's storyline, her being knighted and finally accepted by her peers and whatnot. Theon's storyline as he has been accepted back into the family that he betrayed in the past and was basically tortured for betraying. And all these storylines are kind of just being wrapped up and with a nice little bow that's about to be opened by the Night Prince next episode.
Night King or Night Prince?
Oh, that's right, the Night King. I've been up since 3:30 in the morning because of work, so my brain is a little loopy.
I was hoping you had like a new theory that he actually wasn't a king and that he had to marry somebody to become a king, and that's why he was maybe marching south, kind of like a Shrek situation.
That would be really cool if by the end of this show, it was just Shrek was the Ice King. Or the Night King.
I'm not saying Shrek's the Ice King. I'm saying Lord Farquaad would be the Ice King. And Shrek would be maybe Jon Snow. Or Bran.
Ooh, I did hear a crazy theory about Bran that I know is going to be 100% not true. But it's cool to think about. So... I read somewhere that somebody believes that Bran saw the vision of Jon being resurrected back to life and that he knows that it was him who resurrected Jon and not Melisandre or the Lord of Light, and that Bran knows that he's about to die next episode and that he needs to warg into Jon's body after going through his little time travel vision thing. And then he is going to become one with Jon. So Jon will actually be 2 people.
That's crazy. Like, that's another pop culture reference. That's like Piccolo morphine with I don't really know anyone else's names, but the thing in Dragon Ball Z where Piccolo morphs with someone else and then they become like twice as powerful.
Yeah, they finally get over 9,000.
Yeah. But that reminds me of an interesting thing. What did you think of what Bran said about the Ice King in last episode? Or the Night King. I'm sorry. The Night King.
I keep calling him the Ice King too for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You mean in regards of him basically putting himself as a bait?
Yeah, he said like he talked about the Night King's goals and how he wanted to erase everything, and that in Bran's eyes it seems like the Night King is just an embodiment of death. Do you think it's going to end up being that simple?
No, I think it's going to be a little bit less simple than that.
I hope not. Yeah, I hope so.
And I don't want to say I know for sure, but what I'm like 99% sure is about to happen next episode, because obviously they're not just going to be like, hey, big battle with the dead, and we won. Cool, now we get to spend the next 3 episodes focusing on Cersei. I'm 99% sure Winterfell's going to lose, and that the dead is going to win next episode, and that's when they're going to get pushed out of Winterfell and they're going to have to retreat and run away. And they kept mentioning that whole fire, the dragon fire thing, and they're like, yeah, they never really tried using dragon fire. We're not sure if it's going to work. What if they try using dragon fire and somebody has to use it in like a suicide way and basically burn down Winterfell and take out as many dead as they can with them?
That would be cool. That, I'm kind of with you. I think, like, the whole story up to this point is leading to the White Walkers being important. I don't think they would just beat them in the next episode and then focus on Cersei for the rest of the season, or I hope not.
Yeah, and the other thing is the only characters next episode that really have plot armor, as we kind of discussed it last week, is basically just Jon, Cersei, and probably like Tyrion.
Jaime, probably, but if he dies, it would be like a spectacular death.
Yeah, Jaime could definitely die next episode. The characters who are like 100% going to die is Brienne, Theon. When Theon was like, hey, Bran, you know, I took Winterfell from you, so might as well help you protect it now. Huh? Wink, wink. I know my storyline's over, and I've redeemed myself in the eyes of everybody. So what could possibly go wrong? So he's dead.
The Hound, he's gonna die. Well, and I don't know.
No,
maybe
I don't think the Hound. I don't think the Hound will die, only because he has to go fight his brother, and that's. And I hate to say it, but the show's become that predictable that by this point that it is pretty easy to say what is probably going to happen and what's probably not going to happen. I don't think they're gonna like turn out to be like, we're just gonna kill Jon Snow and everything we set up in these first 2 episodes, it doesn't really matter anymore, and huge curveball, it doesn't even matter that he's a Targaryen.
No, exactly. There's too much plot armor at this point, but I do think something's happening with Daenerys that's going according to my prediction. That she
kind of turns into the Mad Queen?
Yeah, where she's... Honestly, it would have been better if it seems like they're, she did things in the past that were, like, murdering people because she wanted to be a great conqueror and having, like, limitless ambition, but it would be great if, it just seems like this season they're making her worse than she was before, in a way.
They're almost making her, like, for, like, lack of a better way to put it, kind of a snob. Like,
Yeah.
she kind of shows up and she's just like, yeah, I own this place. Check out my dragons. Oh, yeah, what are they going to eat? Whatever the hell they want. And then she tries to, like, do good by Sansa and sit down and talk to her in the one scene. And she can't just, like, overcome the fact, like, yeah, after we defeat the dead, what do we do now? And she gets all offended by that for whatever reason.
Yeah, I know. It's like most people don't think they're even gonna last after that, and she's just.
Yeah, there's like two things that kind of bug me about her right now. And that's she like she kind of had the scene with Sansa, and she basically said, "Yeah, the only reason why I'm here is because I love your brother so much. He changed my mind." It's like, well, what about your dragon that got killed? Like that didn't do anything for you. Like she doesn't mention the fact that her dragon died whatsoever. She makes it sound
Yeah.
like that doesn't matter at all. She's just like, I just love your brother so much. I'm going to do whatever he says. And then when she finds out that, yo, maybe these people don't want you to be their queen, she gets like butthurt about it basically. And she's like, but I love your brother. Like, isn't that enough?
Yeah, and like I don't know, with the birth of her dragons and everything, you would think she would be more concerned about prophecy and like being a hero, like with all of her magic powers and all that. That she would be a little less fixated on that Iron Throne, because it's obvious now that the Iron Throne is just a man-made symbol. It's a little less important than life or death of the whole continent.
yeah, she kind of just forgot who she was this season for whatever reason. It might just be the writing. But
Probably.
she just kind of she's like so one dimensional now, and she like it just bugs me that she doesn't even talk about her dragon that died as a reason for fighting for them. She just says it's because I love your brother so much.
Yeah.
Like really?
One more prediction.
Grey Worm dies?
Before, yeah, Grey Worm dies.
Probably.
Probably. I think Bran actually has a chance of dying too, because if
I
they
hope
introduce Bran's really simplistic view of the Night King, of that he's just an agent of death, killing Bran might be like a huge spin, and then maybe then we would hear like the Night King's side. Not that I even know if he can talk or not, but that it would be interesting if we were taken for a spin and don't like. It looks like everybody's just going to be listening to Bran from this point on, but it'd be cool if that didn't happen.
Well, one of the other scenes that really bugged me about this episode is when Tyrion goes in and sits down to listen to Bran's story. And he's like, "Oh, it's a really long story." And he says, "If only we were trapped inside of a castle with nothing else to do." It's like, cool. We as an audience have an opportunity to learn something. And this will be a great scene where we can learn about the history and whatnot. And, this is going to be great. And then they just cut. And it's like, we learn nothing. It's like, well, were they plotting something? Does Tyrion have a because after that, that's when they seem to have their plan, like, hey, Bran's going to be a sacrificial goat. And I don't know, it gets to the point where it's like, ooh, we get to learn something new from a character who has all the information in the world. And we learn nothing, and we just get a scene where Tyrion drinks with everybody instead. Which I thought that was a cool scene, don't get me wrong, because as a character perspective, like, we enjoy these characters, and this is going to be the last time we see them. Like, Davos will probably end up dying. Like, a lot of these people, hopefully they die, because, last season I was saying the same thing, and not a single character, there was no tension whatsoever. Every character ended up getting away scot-free. So, you never know.
Agreed. Well,
Short and sweet.
Oh, okay. Was that good enough? Or we can finish tonight, or if that's good enough, you let me know.
I mean, that's up to you if you want to keep talking or not later.
Okay. I'll message you. All right. Gotta go. Good talking to you.
You too. We will return with Jake's in a little bit. So we heard from Aaron, and now we're going to hear from Jake. And as I said previously, or about 15 minutes ago, we all live in different time zones, so it's hard to get us all together. So here we are with Jake. Say hi, Jake.
Hello, everybody. Sorry about being spread out and having to do this in 2 parts, but it is what it is.
Don't apologize. They have to deal with it, and it's their fault for listening.
Right.
Anyways, so basically what Aaron and I talked about briefly was just basically who we think's going to die next episode, and then a little bit about the episode we watched today. We went over a little bit like Brienne, and then mostly just the scene between Daenerys and Sansa. And we're kind of saying how Daenerys her character's kind of weird now, where she's kind of turned snobby, and she seems to have completely forgotten about the fact that her dragon died. And she says to Sansa, she's like, yeah, I'm just here because I love your brother so much, and, you know, I'd do anything for him at this point. And it's like, well, isn't the big reason why you're fighting the dead with him is because you saw your dragon die and you saw the dead with your own eyes? Like, that had nothing to do with it. It's just because you love Jon. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I think in a weird way, it's the show trying to be very on the nose about shifting her towards not necessarily a bad guy role, but I feel like they went in a limited way of trying to make her to really portray how she was in previous seasons, where her actions truly have consequences, and I think they're trying to weigh in on that and really remind the viewer that she's done some horrible things, and she wanted to be a conqueror, and she is, and people are starting to treat her as though she is a conqueror. And I think that was the whole point of having the Samwell Tarly interaction with Daenerys last episode. I think that carries over more into this episode, and they're really trying to pigeonhole her into that conqueror's mindset, and that she truly has drawbacks in how she sees the world and how she thinks it should be run. And I think they're doing that in order to contrast it with Jon, who Jon has always been a fair, reasonable, logical thinking commander. He's made mistakes and he's died for his cause, and I think they're trying to show the dichotomy between those two ideas of ruling, and in a weird way they're making Daenerys kind of more straightforward in her delivery on her dialogue and everything.
I mean, it does sound like it could be a possibility. It just seems strange, though, that she hasn't mentioned her dragon who died once. Even in, like,
right.
The week prior to that, she's like, yeah, my dragons are hungry because they don't like the cold. And it's like, it has nothing to do with the other dragon, does it? Or when Bran even mentions, like, yeah, the Ice King has a dragon because it resurrected your dragon from the dead after it killed it. It's like nobody seems to worry about that at all.
Right, and I think a lot of this is due to the time, how much time they have left. But if you go back to, like, Season 2, Season 3, Season 4, Daenerys would do anything for her dragons. Like, she treated them like they were her children, and she called them her children, yet she won't even acknowledge them by their names anymore. Like, other than Drogon, you don't really hear about... Geez, I can't even remember their names at this point. One is...
I think it's Viserion and something else.
The one that now the Night King has.
Yeah.
They're not very good at reminding you that she truly had that connection with her dragons.
Well, and that's
And
why it was such a big deal that she had to, well, she felt like she had to imprison her own dragons and put chains on them and hide them in those dungeons. Like, that was a huge deal for her character to come and do that, because you know how much the dragons do mean to her.
Right, and it also seems, to bring up Jon Snow and all of this, you would think with this love plot that she would almost blame Jon for the death of her dragon in the what was it, the finale of the last season, because Jon was trying to fight off undead while everyone else was getting on the dragons. She could very well blame him for the death of her dragon, but they clearly didn't go that route, and they wanted to go with the love story, which to me, the Jon Daenerys love story is one of the most forced romances I think I've ever seen. I can't think of a scene where they've actually had a good connection, because everything they've talked about has just been military strategy, and it just blows my mind that these two just love each other, and that Daenerys, like you said earlier, talking to Sansa, which Sansa has become one of the most reasonable characters all of a sudden, and is one of the characters completely baffled by this romance, because it kind of really came out of the blue, and Sansa seems like the voice of reason here, because it just does not make sense.
So I'm going to go into Sansa a little bit, but there is something we didn't mention last week, and when you're mentioning how the love story between Jon and Daenerys doesn't seem to be working all too well, I don't know if you saw this, you probably did. George Lucas was on set when they were filming this final season. And as we know, George Lucas is great at telling love stories, especially in his Star Wars prequels, where his idea of flirtatious dialogue is basically just, I hate sand, it's coarse and it gets everywhere. Oh, Anakin, I love you. And it's kind of where this has gotten to at this point, where you're saying, like, all they do is talk about military strategies, but they love each other because of it. And then Daenerys is like, let's go for a ride on the dragons. And Jon's like, okay. It's just...
Right, and I think George Lucas being a part of this is why Dorne isn't in this story anymore, you know.
Well, Dorne's basically, they wrote it out last season.
Which is super unfortunate, because Dorne is like a third of Westeros, and so you kill a couple of sand snakes, and then an entire nation, like one of the most powerful nations, who was very staunch in supporting Daenerys and the Targaryens. Like, they were the one nation where, like, we still think the Targaryens are the true heirs to the throne. And none of that is going to come into play this season, because Dorne is just gone.
No, we're not going to probably see much else other than... I mean, I was telling Aaron that... I think I even said it last time we all got together and talked, that I'm 99% sure that Winterfell's going to lose this battle against the dead. And since Bran was talking about that whole the Dragonfire thing, they're like, we don't know if it'll work. There's only one way to find out. That somebody might have like a suicide mission to burn down Winterfell and try to take out as many as they can with them. And that Winterfell might end up getting burned to the ground and they might have to escape from it or something.
Right. I wouldn't actually mind going back to the first scene between Jaime's trial, if you will.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Wow. Again, the time constraints just really show themselves, because we're talking about a character who has done some of the worst acts, the most pivotal, cruel acts in the show. Pushing Bran out a window, having bastard children with Cersei. He caused the Red Wedding. He's just been a massive problem for the Starks, and he's caused the death of Catelyn, Rob, Rob's wife and newborn.
Not even born.
He crippled Ned Stark in a street fight. Like, I find it so hard to believe that Sansa, or even Daenerys for that matter, should sit there and just believe Brienne and be like, oh yeah, you know, Sansa barely knows Brienne. Daenerys doesn't know Brienne at all. Yet they take her word and just forget about all the horrific acts Jaime has done, and they're just like, yeah, Brienne says he's pretty chill, so whatever. So he killed a bunch of my family and has been the number one enemy this entire time, but we'll just let him go for plot purposes.
I was thinking along the same lines, but also with a different character, because I don't remember, or I don't know if you remember the little line of dialogue where Tormund and all of them come back from the last hearth and finally make it to Winterfell, and they're like, how are the Umbers? And they're like, well, they're all whites now, because they sent the Umbers to the last hearth. Right. And I guess on their way they got attacked and whatnot. Well, if you remember back to the Battle of the Bastards, the Umbers were taking care of Rickon Stark and betrayed the Stark family and handed him over to Ramsay Bolton and got Rickon killed because of it, and then fought Jon in battle. But then Jon was able to basically don't punish the children for the actions of the fathers, basically, I think is one of the lines they say, something along those lines. And he's basically saying, we're going to forgive you in this time. We're not going to hold you accountable for somebody else's actions just because of the situation that we're in. And I think that kind of goes along the same lines of what happened with Jaime, even though it does feel extremely convenient, because you're 100% right, because these characters don't know all the good things he's done and how much of a change he's made. All they know is he crippled Ned, he betrayed your family, and basically started or helped start the war by pushing Bran out the window. And yeah, I don't know if they know about the Red Wedding part, but I'm pretty sure they can put two and two together that the Lannisters send their regards and whatnot. That
they could have just asked Arya.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And I think that's been the issue with this season, is that in order to wrap things up, it's almost as though characters have the knowledge that we as the viewer have, which should not be the case, and it never was the case in the earliest seasons. Characters only knew what they were told and what they witnessed themselves. Otherwise, everything was stories or like far-fetched tall tales about characters. So that scene, I knew they had to let Jaime go going into it, just because plot. He just has to survive if you want to see him in. I didn't think they were going to actually go for the shocking thing and execute him there, because he's got more important plot lines to wrap up.
Plus, we mentioned it before, they had a much better opportunity to kill him last season in a very heroic fashion. Why would they let that drop just to execute him for coming to King's Landing for whatever reason? Right. Or not King's Landing, Winterfell?
Right. The next scene after that was a bit interesting to me, because I was like, I always wanted it to happen until I didn't. It was where Arya eye fucks Gendry, and I'm like, oh, they're totally going to bang. And jump forward a couple of scenes. Oh, they definitely bang, and
they
I realized
totally
I did not want to see it.
Yeah, I really don't know how to feel about that, because coming into the show and getting to where we are now, I've always thought of both Sansa and Arya as kind of like little sisters who aren't related to me. And especially Arya, because she's like the gets into mischief. She's like the typical like little sibling, and you grow up with them, and now you watch them lose their virginity, and it's like, ugh. I still think
Yeah,
she's only like 12 years old in the show. Like in my mind, I know she's a grown woman at this point, but it just doesn't feel that way. Like same thing with Gendry. Like I don't even want to see him go out and uh, get a bunch of whores and whatnot, like Tyrion or even like Pod. It's just like
well,
I don't look at those characters like that, and it's just kind of weird.
for me, I think I started watching. I never read the books. I know a lot about what happens in the books, but I believe that I started watching around season 2, which has been about, I don't know, what is it, 8 to 10 years ago,
Something like
roughly.
that.
Um, if you actually watch and didn't binge watch Game of Thrones, you feel that time, and it's like Arya in season 1, which season 1, episode 1, and this episode and the last episode of this season have been very similar.
Yep.
There's just kind of like homages to episode 1, and this kind of felt weird again because they're alluding to episode 1, which makes me think of Arya, who had to have been like 10, I think, in the first episode. Or
Well,
9.
the actress was about 13 or 14 when the first season came out, because she's in her 20s now, if I'm not mistaken.
I think she's only 22, so I think she would have been 12, 10 or 12. She's either 20 or 22. Anyways, it was. I always wanted Arya and Gendry to get together. I just thought it would be handled in a bit more light-hearted, like tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, they're gonna get it on, and they're both virgins, and well, in this case, Gendry no longer is, but Arya is, so you kind of have like a. You get to see these kids do the thing, and it's like they could have just done it in a way where it was like off screen, but it was full blown. Okay, we're there, we're watching, we're watching this happen right now, and
Well, it's like you're saying, it's cool that it happens between those two specific characters because they do have a lot of history between each other, and that they do have some good chemistry between each other. But it's also the situation that they're put in, and like the reasoning behind it is because Arya expects to die next episode,
right,
or for her the next day, and there's like this entire episode just has that kind of morbid feel to it where all these characters are literally getting ready to face death and nobody thinks they're going to make it. So when Pod starts doing that little singing of what is it? It's some Jenny, isn't it? What's the name of the song?
yeah, it's. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. But he starts singing that song, and then it's basically just going through like Arya and Gendry. You have Theon and Sansa are like eating stew together, and they're just like enjoying each other's companionship. You got Missandei and Grey Worm, and it's going through everybody who's drinking together over the fire, who's basically just getting drunk one last time. And you're just doing this like little montage of all these characters that some of which are side characters, but they've been in the show since season 1, like Jorah, Sam, and all these characters have been with us for all this time. And now we're seeing how they're reacting to what feels to them like an inevitable death. And they're basically all giving up and giving up hope because nobody knows what to expect. And there's just a very sad thing behind it, and everybody's actions, like getting drunk for the last time, having sex for the first time, just trying to enjoy companionship with somebody who you grew up with, who feels like a long lost friend at this point, whatever it may be. Kind of like even what they said in the behind the scenes episode, or a behind the episode thing that they do. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of depressing. And I was saying this to Aaron too, that it kind of reminds me of the season finale of Lost, where plot-wise and story-wise it's a little wonky, but because we care about the characters so much, I feel like that's what makes it a lot more effective.
Right. Podrick was singing, what was it called? Jenny's song, I believe. That really reminded me of Return of the King when Pippin sings.
Yes. I 100% agree with that.
Which I think is 100% what they wanted to do. Because Game of Thrones is heavily inspired by Lord of the Rings. I also enjoyed characters realizing that they're going to die, but at the same time, I just felt it was a little too on the nose and foreshadowing. It felt like a lot of characters were having their plot armor removed.
Yep.
Grey Worm talking to Missandei, and I believe they're saying they're going to go back to Noth, is it? I forget where. It's like, oh, that's not happening. Next episode, that's definitely not happening.
So the best part about that is I couldn't help but think of Black Dynamite. You've seen that, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the guy is walking with him in the little factory, and he goes, yeah, after this, I'm going to go home to my wife and kids. I'm going to hug my wife because I haven't seen her in so long. It's going to be great. And then we're going to go on this great vacation, whatever the hell he's saying. And then he gets shot, and Black Dynamite goes, who didn't see that coming? I mean, who saw that coming?
Yes, this episode was very... It foreshadowed who's going to die. And as much as I enjoyed seeing Brienne have her story arc completed, having her story arc completed means she is now dead. Jaime removed her plot armor, hence allowing her to be murdered viciously in the next episode.
Good.
And I don't normally give too much thought into the snippets that they show for next episode, but Brienne was in the Vanguard, and the Vanguard people don't live very long. I also was bothered by them going, you know what, the crypts are pretty safe. Yeah, I think the crypts are safe. I'm like, oh man, the crypts are definitely not safe.
Nope.
I think every character who's going to be in the crypts is going to die a very brutal death.
I actually don't know about that, because there's only one character who didn't really get a moment in the past 2 episodes, and that's Varys. And Varys is, I think in the trailer, he's in the crypts. Along with, now we know Tyrion's going to be down there because he's getting sent down there. And I have a feeling that they're going to probably plan something to maybe get everybody out of there, because that's where all like the women and children are. And Varys is probably going to have a lot more moments in this next episode, and he's probably not going to die.
Yeah, I was wondering what they're going to introduce to get people out of the crypts, if they do. Because I don't recall a single bit of dialogue that ever said the crypts had... Well, shoot, now that I say that, I can't recall, but did... Season 2, when Theon took over Winterfell, did Rickon, Bran, and... I'm going to call her Tonks, but it's the actress... it's Osha.
Yeah.
Osha is the character. She played Tonks in Harry Potter. I can't recall if they escaped out of the crypts through... or if they snuck out of Winterfell through the crypts. But that would be the only breadcrumb that would lead me to believe that there's a plot way out of the crypts. Because other than that, I can't recall them saying there was a way out of them.
It's kind of funny, because you just mentioned Harry Potter, and when I was talking with Aaron for the 15 minutes, he found a way to bring up Harry Potter. And it's interesting that you guys aren't talking together, but somehow find a way to both bring in Harry Potter. But I can't remember that specific detail off the top of my head, but I would not be surprised if that is how they got out of... Wait, no, because Theon left, and then Bran and them went up and talked to the Maester, who was Maester Lewin, I think it was.
Yeah, it was Maester Lewin. Oh, because...
Yeah.
Did Osha... Yeah, she slept with Theon.
Yeah, and then they went up and talked to him and whatnot before leaving.
But they were hiding in the crypts.
Yes.
And then went up. Okay. So yeah, they don't have a plot device for people to get out of the crypts currently. So they're just going to have to find a way to spin that next episode.
So we're talking about the crypts, and it reminds me of the little girl with the burned face, and that was probably one of the moments, because I love Davos's character, even though he hasn't done anything in like the past 19 seasons.
he's a fantastic actor, and he really did that character justice.
Yeah,
Just really
and
brought him to life.
when the little girl comes up with the burned face, and you kind of see his reaction to her, that made me really sad.
Yeah.
Because I know exactly what was going through his mind, because he was just thinking of little Shireen. It's like, damn, that hits home.
Yeah, Davos is a really complex, lovable character, and it's a shame that they haven't found too many ways to make him integral to the story. But that was a really nice nod at that scene.
I also think it's a shame that he's gonna die next episode.
I actually wasn't sure that he would, because I feel, again, like these advisor characters, I think they just have to have a way out and, I don't know, continue narrating what's happening.
Well, Davos is gonna be fighting though.
Did they say that he was?
Yeah, because he was talking to the one guy who was like scared to go into battle, and he's like, you know, I never had training when I went into battle, and look at me, I survived 2 battles. You'll be fine. And it's like, Davos, just keep painting that target on your back.
Right. Samwell Tarly giving his sword, his heirloom, to Jorah was a nice touching moment.
Jorah's gonna die too.
Jorah's definitely going to die. Same with his cousin, Lyanna. Definitely going to die.
That would mean the whole Mormont bloodline would be gone.
I still don't know when they're going to kill Tormund. I keep feeling like he should have died episodes ago. But he just hasn't, and I'm wondering how they're going to get him to survive this next one. I feel like because he's a fan favorite and he's been so well received that they keep finding ways to have him stick around. But he totally should have died at the finale of the last season when he had like 20 undead on him for a couple of minutes, and he was just screaming loudly, and then they just pulled him out and he didn't have a scratch on him, so he was fine. Yeah,
that really bugged me in that scene. That whole episode, and it actually wasn't the finale, it was the episode before the finale. But yeah, when they go over and decide to kidnap a walker. I guess I'm thinking of Walking Dead right now. Kidnap a zombie, basically. Mm-hmm. And yeah, everybody just comes out completely unscathed, except for Thoros Amir, who I think I mentioned last week should have died like 13 seasons ago.
Right.
It's like these characters aren't important, but they're just, because they're fan favorites, they want to keep them alive so that they can have dialogue like, oh, is the big woman here? Oh, if I was king, I would have knighted you 100 times already. Like, stuff like that, which it's funny and it's goofy and it's fun, but like that character, I hate to say it, he should have been dead by now. And maybe he'll die next episode. But yeah, we don't know. He's one of those guys that he very well could just make it out of it just cuz.
Yeah, I never know with him. I just feel like you're always like, hey, this could be his moment, but it never is. And they've pulled that trick a lot, and this is the last season, so you're wondering how many times they could pull it again. Jon Snow telling Daenerys that he's Aegon, that I have very mixed feelings on, because it seems it's very fitting in the episode that they all think they're going to die. So it would make sense that he would tell her, but at the same time, there's plenty of reasons why he shouldn't have told her. And it felt like he just removed some plot armor on himself, because if Daenerys, the one goal she's always had is to sit on the Iron Throne, you might have just given her an idea to let you die. Like, why would she save you again and risk a dragon to save you like she did before if you are now someone who's going to contest and has a better claim to the throne than she does?
What I feel like may happen, because I don't think Jon or Daenerys is going to die next episode. because they're basically the central story of this season at this point.
Right.
But what may happen is John might get himself in one of those sticky situations. And since we got Ghost in this episode for 3 seconds, Ghost might actually come into play again. Hopefully.
I really hope so.
Actually, Ghost might die next episode for all we know.
Based on how they've treated all the other dire wolves,
yeah,
it seems likely, because when they killed Summer and Shaggy Dog for little to no reason other than, you know, they just charged into undead and didn't even save time for Bran.
Yeah, I got
could
stabbed
see
to
them
death.
just giving Ghost a very lackluster, poor death. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. But I could see them doing that. And I'm also hoping, like, fingers crossed, I think there's a 1% chance that Nymeria comes out of the woods with her new dire wolf pack family and does something.
I feel like that would be a little goofy.
I know, but it's weird that that line is just kind of gone and that the Starks never really cared about their dire wolves, except for Jon.
Well, because in the early seasons, basically up till the Red Wedding, every time a dire wolf died, there was either huge consequences or it was symbolizing the death of a Stark. Because the wolf died when Robb died. I can't remember the name of his dog. And then Lady got killed as a punishment for something that Arya did, which caused the rift between Arya and Sansa's character, and also Sansa and Joffrey's characters, and also threw Ned into the mix of it and just caused a lot of tension. And for the plot and the story, there's a huge significance for the wolf dying. But yeah, then you have Bran's wolf, Summer. It's Summer, right?
Bran's is Summer, yep, and Rickon's was Shaggy Dog.
Yeah, and then, Summer just jumps in there and just gets stabbed to death right before we get, like, that scene with Hodor, and it's like, well, why did he die? Like, what was the significance of that? Just to kind of show that he has no more protector anymore? Was it to symbolize that a Stark might be dying soon? Like, what was the significance? And there didn't seem to be as much relevance as Robb's wolf dying or Lady dying.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of a shame how they treat the wolves, but I think they just do it because of money reasons.
Yeah, that's what I think too. What do you think of the Night King and his goals?
Aaron and I talked about that. We both believe that, or hope that there's more to it than he's just pure evil looking to destroy all life.
Right. I was very, very let down that they seemed to be going that route of having him just be pure evil, when everything that George R.R. Martin set up for these books was to show people black and white is not how life works. Everything is gray. You know, the beauty of Game of Thrones was being able to talk to a person and be like, who's your favorite character? And some people loved Jaime even when he was a complete asshole. Some people loved Ned because he was so honorable and he was always trying to do the right thing. Some people think Daenerys was right in being a conqueror. You can pick a character and you are completely justified in why you like them and what their motives are. That was what they built. Even though Tyrion's a Lannister, he's a lot of people's favorite character, because even though he's the enemy to the Starks and to the Targaryens for most of the show, you can see why he does the things that he does. And Tywin always summarized it best, that he did what he did for his family. And that is what every single one of these houses is done. They're trying to protect their families. And to have the main bad guy of a show that shows you, a show and the novel show you life isn't always good and evil, it feels like a major letdown that the Night King really just wants to end all human life because he's evil.
but we don't know that for sure yet.
Right.
It's just kind of going off of what Bran said, and I mean, Bran doesn't necessarily see the future or know anything about the Ice King and whatnot.
I was wondering if they were going to devote some time to explaining the Night King's background more, but I don't think they're going to, unfortunately. I know in the books he has way more reason, and there's way more speculation about the Night King's character.
Well, we don't even know in the books that
If it's the Night King.
that the whites and all that came from the children of the forest. We don't know that. We don't know really anything about them whatsoever. It's all coming from, I mean, we know a little bit, but nothing about motives, where they came from, what they're here for, what they're up to. They're still just roaming around out in the north collecting their army and whatnot. Because Hardhome in the books, they basically just say, yeah, Hardhome was attacked. And Jon looks at a note and he's like, huh, well, that sucks. And then he moves on. Like, nobody actually like goes to Hardhome and sees the dead and whatnot.
Right.
It's more so like speculative of what's actually happening, as you said.
Right. I know a lot of the books, there's pieces of stories that were told that either affect the story or don't. That's why you kind of hope like Old Nan's stories come into play in season 1, when Old Nan's telling Bran all these stories, and this is where he gets like all these, a lot of his knowledge actually does come from Old Nan's stories.
Yep, Macumba.
It feels like the Night King should have more motives, and I'm not sure. I'm a little worried at this point that it is just going to be big action scene.
Well, and that's the thing. These past 2 episodes, we didn't really get anything story-wise, or very minimal story-wise. So we have, like, side stories wrapping up, like character arcs wrapping up and whatnot. But we don't know anything about their battle plans other than Bran's going to sacrifice himself. We don't know anything about like what their plans are afterwards. It's just, hey, we're going to fight them. So we haven't learned anything new. And next episode is just going to be a big battle scene, which is going to further the plot because win or lose, that's going to make a big difference. But we're basically going to get an hour and a half of action and not learning. And it's just going to be visually really cool, but I want to know what Tyrion and Bran were talking about. Like, those are 2 characters I wish would sit down and talk with each other, and they finally do, and then it just cuts away. Like, that was our opportunity to learn anything. Maybe Tyrion's like, Bran, you seem to know, like, somebody who all of a sudden knows or can see anything in time. Tell me, what was my brother like when he killed the Mad King? Why did he really do it? Or share this with me or something. Or maybe he's going to try to come up with a plan like, you know about this the Night King. What should we do to stop him? What do you think will work? Why do you think it'll work? Oh, you saw this? Interesting. Like, just anything. Like, teach us something. But instead, he's like, he sits down with them. I want to hear your whole story. Cut to, I want to get drunk. Strange. Why we don't get to learn anything, and now we just get dialogue sequences with jokes and whatnot where love triangles come into play and nothing progresses.
Right. And I'm still a little confused with the Bran thing, because I think they want to use Bran as bait, but Bran is now saying he's he's like the collective conscious of mankind, or at least its memory. So if the Night King's sole objective is to eliminate Bran, it seems like a very bad plan, especially when I don't know how you want to use Bran as bait. It's going to be very interesting how they use him as it, but I feel like that's a very dangerous game to play. And,
Like a dangerous game writing-wise, or just putting him in that situation in general?
both. For the story, it seems a little risky. If they know that he's coming after Bran, why risk Bran? You might want to get him somewhere safer than Winterfell. And if the White Walkers are making a beeline towards Bran, then if he just goes further south, then you know where the White Walkers are going to go. And it seems as though Jon and everyone who went past the wall and killed a White Walker and realized that if you kill a White Walker, that every white that they summon dies. You'd think that'd be some important information to share in this episode to everyone before this battle occurs.
Well, especially since the Night King seems to be the head leader, so if you knock out the Ice King, you might knock out the entire army.
Right. I think that was primarily most of the big scenes that happened in this episode. Some little things. I thought the amount of dragon glass that they had was comical. They were like putting dragon glass just on the walls. They were putting it everywhere. Did you see? There was a part where they just had an entire wagon full of Valyrian steel, and it blew my mind. I'm like, where did they get all this Valyrian steel all of a sudden?
I didn't see that.
If I recall right, maybe I didn't see it. I could have sworn they had a dragon glass wagon, and then they mentioned that they had Valyrian steel as well.
I might have missed that if they did.
I'd have to go back and watch it. I don't want to
spread
wrong information, but I'm pretty sure they mentioned that they had Valyrian steel.
Did you catch the part when Arya is playing with the dragon glass and she throws it at the thing of wood, and the guy turns around and he's like, "Huh, that's weird." And then she throws the second one and that guy starts running because he's like, "Oh shit, somebody's throwing stuff at me."
Yeah. I forgot to mention that. Arya has some of the cringiest dialogue of all time. It is hard to watch a scene with her because they're trying to make you believe that she's this unbelievable badass, and it just does not come across as such. And it's so hard to listen to the dialogue that they have given her and how everyone's intimidated by her. It's weird. I can't stand it.
I mean, she did come to Winterfell, and the first thing she did was beat Brienne in a hand-to-hand fight.
Yeah.
Or at least go toe-to-toe with her.
It's good to know that from one of the worst plot lines in the history of the show that we at least get a badass? I don't know. I'm just thinking of how bad the House of Black and White was it?
Yep. When somebody mentioned, like, what if Arya dies next episode? And all I could think was, then nothing in season 6 from her story mattered at all. Like,
right.
There's no point to it whatsoever, and it already feels like it was pointless. And if she just, big surprise, ends up dying, then her entire story meant nothing whatsoever.
Right.
Unless she gets resurrected from the dead, and she becomes, like, the ultimate villain. Because she already has, like, the double-sided swingy javelin type of weapon. So she might become, like, an evil Darth Maul type character and start killing the shit out of people. And that would be cool.
Normally I would say that's an awful idea, but the fact that she hasn't mentioned her list once, her list was the entire motive for her character, and she has Jaime and the Hound both in the camp. 2 people on her list are in her proximity, and she won't kill them? It just seems... The Hound, you can make a case for that she might still have some shred of humanity and that she can realize people can have redemption. But there's nothing that Jaime has done or said to her in the time that she was at the crossing at the Freys that would make her not want to kill Jaime still.
Well, they did mention the list just briefly, but it was just the Hound. He was like, "Is Beric Dondarrion on your list?" And she's like, "He was for a moment." And Beric's like, "Yep. Sorry about that. You know, shit happens."
Which made no sense because he saved her. There was nothing that he did that would cause him to be on that list. He saved her.
Well, he was gonna ransom her off, and that was about it. So she became kind of like a captive at one point.
Right, but he did a trial by combat, lost to the Hound, and that was deemed just that the Hound could go. I understand she had frustrations and wanted the Hound dead. But other than that, if he's going to ransom her off, is that really justification for wanting him dead compared to what the other characters had done?
Yes. I think even more so, you could argue.
Compared to, let me see if I can recall the list.
Joffrey.
Joffrey, Cersei, Jaime, the Hound.
The Strangler.
The Strangler. Or was it the Tickler? Well, he died anyways. He was
Yeah.
just there to torture people.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. Well, there's Sir Ilan Payne. Or not, you already said that. Sir Mayor Trant, that's who I'm thinking of.
Oh, you're right.
And she killed him.
Sir Marin Trant, so she's killed one person on her list?
She also killed Walder Frey.
Oh, you're right. That's true, too.
Because he was on there after the Red Wedding.
That is true.
And then she killed the entire Frey family. Using the pie, which was a reference to the book, which I thought was funny.
Yes.
Which, I think it was one of the Tyrells or something. He's, like, baking a cake. And he keeps laughing at the feast. He's like, "Ha ha ha! Everybody's enjoying the cake or the pie." Because he knows he baked a couple of the Frey children into it. And he fed it to the family. And he's just laughing and getting drunk like, "Yeah, everybody's eating this pie." I can't remember who it was, though.
I think of Marjorie when she was like, "Oh, look, pie!" And she breaks up one of the most awkward tensions between Joffrey and Tyrion.
Yep.
I
When
love that moment.
Tyrion's like, "Neil!"
You mean Joffrey.
Who did I say?
You said Tyrion.
What?
Although it would be funny if Tyrion was the one up there saying Neil to Joffrey.
That would be awesome. Yeah, when Jaime told Brienne to kneel, that's all I could think of is him going, "Kneel!" I was really
just laughing because I'm like, her plot armor has officially gone out the window and she is a dead woman.
Well, and here's the thing with that. I hate Brienne in the show, but she's my favorite character in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the book, she's a character, I mean, basically, same motives. She wants to do right, stay true to her word, and, you know, fight for the innocent and be as honorable as possible. And she goes on her journey and gets put into all these horrible situations where her honor is tested and she's forced to fight dishonorably against dishonorable people. She's forced into situations where she has to break her vows that she's given to other people. And she's put in all these horrible situations all the way to the point where she's literally, spoiler for the book, she's literally being hung by Catelyn Stark, who got reanimated by Beric Dondarrion and the dude that died last season. Now I can't think of his name. She gets resurrected, comes back as Lady Stoneheart, is hanging Brienne because she says, "You betrayed my family by breaking your word." She's like, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't." She's like, "Well, if you didn't, then you have to either die now or go kill Jaime." And it's like, well, Jaime gave me his word, or I gave Jaime my word that I would, like, do what he needs. And it's like, oh, now she's put in this situation where she has to break one of her vows and completely throw away her entire honor and purpose of her character in order to save her own life. And, like, that's a really tough situation for a character like her to be put in. And, like, that character change and arc in the book just, it fascinated me, and I found it very relatable in like life in general, where you want to live life a certain way, but you're put in situations in reality where you're tested as a person, and sometimes it could mean horrible outcome if you decide to continue going the route that you want to go. And that was the situation she was put in. Now Brienne in the show is fucking Jesus, and she can never die, well, until next episode, and she's always there to save the day, always in the right situation at the right time, and always found a way to win, no matter what. She has no flaws whatsoever. She's a perfect character. It's like, that's not interesting. That's boring. There's no, like, surprise whatsoever. She gets everything she wants, and she always wins. That's not interesting. That's not cool. That's not somebody who's put to a decision where they have to break their honor and potentially lose their life because of it. It's like the way that the characters have grown apart is like, I don't know, it always bugged me seeing her in the show in the right place at the right time every time, when she had such a cool story in the books.
Yeah, it is definitely a shame because she is one of the most tragic characters in the book, because she is so just, and everything she's trying to do she fails at.
And not because she's unskilled, it's just because she gets really unlucky and is put in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
But yeah.
Overall, I thought this episode was better than the first, but at the same time, knowing that there's only 4 episodes left and you have to devote so much to battle time, it was just okay. It was kind of nice, but I still felt there should have been more that they could have done. My predictions for next episode, a whole lot of people are going to die. And I think that's just about everyone's prediction.
Hopefully a lot of people die, because I really don't want them to get to the point where they're like, well, let's not kill off these characters. Let's kill off, like, Podrick Payne. Let's kill off Podrick and Grey Worm. And you know what? That's enough. We'll just leave everybody else. It's like, no, this is the end of the series. Literally kill every single character and just leave Cersei's storyline left. Now that's a twist.
If they don't kill people next episode, then it's going to water down the threat of the undead.
Well, it already has last season when they did that. When the dead couldn't even take on 5 people with axes who were surrounded by hundreds of them, and they couldn't take out a single one of them.
Freezing temperature, of which all of them should have died overnight because it was below 0, and they didn't have food, and they traveled a couple hundred miles to get one undead.
Well, they did have Gendry running, though, and he's really fucking fast, so...
Really fast. He can run a couple hundred miles in no time.
In about a half hour. But yeah, I mean, I agree this episode was definitely better than last week's episode. From a character perspective, I like what they were doing. I like the send-offs that they're giving characters, and, you know, I liked it for that reason, because it did feel like a good build-up to a battle. But I also agree that with so few episodes left, why not just condense the first and second episode into one, make that an 80-minute episode, and just take care of all that, get it out of the way, build everything up, do what you got to do, and just focus more on plot or teaching us something or anything. Like, it feels like they're doing too many teases at this point. It's like, why don't you just try to wrap up information? Or maybe we're going to get couple long segments in episodes to come. I don't know, because I feel like the next couple episodes are going to have a lot of battles. And once they get to Cersei, there's going to be a war with Cersei, and maybe Cersei or King's Landing and the undead after the undead take over Winterfell, because they're going to just keep going south probably. So I don't know.
Yep. My last thought for what's going to happen next episode: how do you kill an undead dragon? shouldn't the undead dragon be a massive threat
Should be.
that they have to take care of? Because they haven't really established. You could kill a living dragon through fairly normal means. Drogon got pretty injured in the arena against the Harpies, I believe.
He also got injured by Bronn.
Right. And I know that the undead army doesn't have, or sorry, you know that people in Winterfell, they do not have any ballistas or items that would counter a dragon. They have plenty of dragon glass and Valyrian steel, maybe that has added effects against the undead dragon. I would think it would, because Valyrian steel was very dangerous to White Walkers, so it might make the undead dragon vulnerable to Valyrian steel, but at the same time that would mean you would have to have either arrows of Valyrian steel. I don't know if they mentioned that dragon glass will do anything to this dragon. That's kind of why it's a bit of a weird point, because I'm not sure what can harm this dragon, but it's either going to be arrows or a sword of some kind.
Well,
and I'm not sure what character would be able to take a dragon on at this point.
And that's one of the things. They skipped over the whole battle strategy part of the conversations that they were having, and they skipped straight to, all right, everyone's clear on what we're doing tomorrow? Cool, good. All right, we don't need to explain that again. Bran, what do you want to do? Oh, well, I'm going to sacrifice myself. Sounds good to us. It's like, we don't know what they're planning, and yeah, nobody seems to give a shit about the fact that they have a dragon. Bran explicitly said the Night King has a dragon, and people are like, it's just a dragon. Like, dragons never win wars.
That, and Daenerys has all the reasons in the world to make sure her dragons are not here in this fight. If they truly are her children, and this is the greatest threat to her dragons, that's a good reason to not have them here. As dangerous as they are, we saw how accurate the Night King was, and it took one spear to kill a dragon. You're going to tell me he's not going to be targeting dragons in the next episode, the biggest threat to him?
Probably not.
I'm very curious to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I guess only time will tell at this point. Well, that was our discussion on Jake's End about the second episode of the Game of Thrones final season. I think it's called The Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which is about Brienne being knighted and whatnot. And thank you for joining us. We will be back next week after the big battle. And we'll see if we were right or if we were 100% wrong. Thanks for joining us.
Peace.